there, Skeleton Key here, and getting ready to go on my road trip to Albuquerque. Stopped at the library to pick up a book, and this book is the first book I will be reading for the BookTube Prize Quarterfinals. I am judging nonfiction this time, I think it was Group C, but anyway, it's All In by Billie Jean King, autobiography. I'm not much into sports, never really been much of a tennis fan, but I do remember her being a really big deal when I was a kid. So this will be interesting. It is, I'm not sure if this is the biggest book on my list, but it might well be. It's pretty thick. I'm at the library and I just picked up another book for my BookTube Prize judging. This is Empire of Pain, and that is by Patrick Radden Keefe. He's the author of Say Nothing. I started Say Nothing for a book club, and it had to go back to the library before I finished it, but that was riveting. And this is The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty, and honestly, I'm not really interested in the topic, but I am totally willing to give this author a chance to make it interesting to me. I have started on All In by Billie Jean King, and it's going really well. Like on page 6, I hadn't even gotten through the preface, and I just wanted to stand up and cheer. So, yeah, I think this is going to be really good. It'll be interesting to get sort of an adult perspective on a time before I was born and when I was a young child, and feminism, and it's an autobiography, so it covers all sorts of things, not just feminism. It's shaping up to be really, really good. So I went to the library today and I picked up 2 more books for the BookTube Prize reading quarterfinals round. So this is The Doctor's Blackwell by Janice P. Nimura. And this is How 2 Pioneering Sisters Brought Medicine to Women and Women to Medicine. And this is Diary of a Young Naturalist by Dara McAnulty, I believe. Maybe I should listen to the audiobook a little bit just to make sure I'm pronouncing that right. I gather this is set in Ireland, so there's probably lots of Irish words and names and things that, yeah, I should probably be listening to the audiobook of this instead. But I went ahead and got the hardcover from the library. I will be saving this one for April because Genreland, the theme for April is diaries and letters. So this should count for that. Happy National Tea Day. Got my favorite mug and one of my favorite Dryad teas, Ghost in the Machine, and also a trivet from Dryad Pottery. There's a better view of the trivet, and the charm, and of course the mug. The mug is from Dryad Pottery, and this doesn't do it justice. The color is just really beautiful, and the design so nice. But the little infuser charm is also from Dryad. I finally have all 6 of my BookTube Prize books from the library. And this is the order in which they are due back at the library, from left to right. So even though I'm already quite a ways into All In, I am going to start in on A Little Devil in America tonight, and then I will be reading them in this order. I have finished reading A Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdurraqib. I did end up listening to the audiobook for this one, and I really enjoyed it. He dedicated it to Josephine Baker, and I thought it was really interesting how he would go in and he'd focus on Baker, and then he'd kind of pull back and, in the subtitle is Notes in Praise of Black Performance. So he would pull back from Josephine Baker, and he would talk in broader terms about the history of Black performance, mostly in America, but also, Josephine Baker was famous in Europe and elsewhere. So the discussion is not strictly about American performance, but I really appreciated getting this fresh perspective. The author is a millennial, so significantly younger than I am. So it was interesting to hear him talking about these things that happened before I was born, and hearing his perspective, and how these things were important to his growth and his development as an artist. He is primarily a poet, an essayist, and one thing I really liked was some of the sections of this were written in a very stream of consciousness style, very poetic, and even the regular prose was very poetic, and I really enjoyed the flow of his language. But getting back to this fresh perspective for me, I'm a middle-aged white woman, and I don't really know a whole lot about the history of Black performance. And so I learned a lot of things in this book, and there were a lot of things that I was familiar with from my own youth. Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston. These were big performers when I was young, and I knew they were important to my Black classmates in a different way from how I enjoyed their performances. And so I got a little bit more insight into that, and just how important they were to the whole structure of the arts in America. So yeah, I feel like this is a really insightful work, and it's also just a really dang good read. Now, as far as ranking, so this is the first book I've finished for the quarterfinals. Unlike the octafinals, I have a feeling that this is going to be a lot tighter. I don't think there are going to be any, duds or any that I'm just like, yeah, it was okay, I guess. I think these are all going to be good books. So I'm just going to put this in the slot 3 for now. But I'm, definitely, as far as I can tell, this might come out on top. So I'll just put it in the number 3 slot and see if it moves up or down once I've finished another book. Okay, so this actually went pretty quickly. I listened to the audiobook for this, and I also looked through, because it does have some pictures and the notes, the little glossary thing at the end is actually on the audiobook too. But there are pictures, and so I was reading the book and listening. And so this is Diary of a Young Naturalist by Dara McAnulty. It's a memoir about loving the natural world and fighting to save it. And so Dara McAnulty is this teenager in Northern Ireland, and he's autistic, and he talks a lot about life as an autistic teenager, but he is, you know, his special interest, because we autistics, we have special interests. I mean, doesn't everybody have a hobby? And he does even address that in the book, that okay, maybe our special interests are a little more intense than just a hobby, and but he prefers to call it a passion, and I agree. It's like my special interest is books. In case you haven't figured that out, I have been passionate about books since I was very young. This is really good. I really enjoyed this. It's interesting and it's good autism rep. I mean, he's a little stereotypical, I guess, you know, teenage boy, because that's what so often, especially in the media, comes to mind is the autistic boy and the hand flappy and all that. And I thought it was weird. He calls it styming instead of stimming. I'd never heard it pronounced styming before, and I don't know if that's a Northern Ireland thing, or because everyone I know says stimming, but I'm in America, so. And he does talk about also Greta Thunberg, and you know, they know each other. They I guess follow each other on social media. I can't decide if I think this is a hopeful book or not. It is pretty clear, and he acknowledges that, yeah, things are gonna get really, really bad, and his generation is really gonna be SOL. Yeah, his generation's gonna get screwed. But at the same time, I feel kind of hopeful because there are people like him and Greta Thunberg, and it also makes me feel a little guilty. I mean, I'm not a boomer. I blame the boomers. I mean, not all boomers, okay, fine, but yeah, I kind of blame boomers for all the bad in the world. And I don't know how to feel about being a Gen Xer and where that puts me, or Gen X in general, in the grand scheme of things for saving the world. I think probably Gen X tried and failed, and now we're like, come on millennials, you can do it, come on Gen Z, you can do it. And so I think a lot of us are just cheering on the younger generations from the sidelines and saying, yeah. But all that to say that I really like this. Right now, though, I think I do have to put this higher, simply for the fact that this was great and all, but it didn't draw me in the same way that this book did. I don't know if it's just his writing style. I mean, there's nothing wrong with his writing style. I think it was just a little too, I don't know, flowy or poetic, which is probably, you know, lots of reasons for people to really love this, and which explains why a lot of people really, really love this. I mean, if that's your style, if that's what you like, more power to you. It just got a little, I don't know, maybe a little repetitive even. Yeah, I would, for if anyone is looking for something like this, I would highly recommend it. This just wasn't what in this time, this month, I don't know. I didn't really find it hugely compelling. So yeah, I have been listening to audiobooks for this one. I think my brain just really does better with nonfiction when I have audio and text together. Because there's a lot of kind of detailed stuff that I do kind of want to see on the page, but at the same time, it's a little overwhelming on the page. And so if I've got something in my ear just kind of throwing it past me, I don't get bogged down in the details. that's I mean, it wasn't nonfiction, it was fiction, but The Martian, really, audio helped a lot with The Martian, because even though I didn't understand the math at all, I would still try to do the math, and that was not a good thing. But that said, I did listen to a sample of the audio of The Doctor's Blackwell, and this is by Janice P. Nimura, and I don't like the narrator. I'm not saying she was a bad narrator, it's just her narration style just did not work for me. So I did not get that. So but this is due back at the library soon. So so this is definitely up next. And I'll just read the blurb here. Elizabeth Blackwell believed from an early age that she was destined for a mission beyond the scope of ordinary womanhood. In 1849, she became the first woman in America to receive a medical degree. Her intelligence and intensity ultimately won her the acceptance of the male medical establishment. She was soon joined in her iconic achievement by her younger sister Emily. Exploring the sisters' allies, enemies, and enduring partnership, this richly researched new biography celebrates two complicated pioneers who exploded the limits of possibility for women in medicine. So, but as far as ranking, I mean, relatively, this and then this. So for right now, this is in the number 2 slot, and this is in the number 3 slot, because I would be perfectly content sending both of these through to the next round. I have a feeling I'm gonna have to start making some really tough choices, because I think these are all probably going to be really good, but only 3 are going to go through, so I have to rank some lower. Okay, so I am still reading The Doctor's Blackwell by Janice P. Nimura, and I'm also listening to All In, an autobiography by Billie Jean King. These two are very much about feminist issues. They're very, very different books. And I can tell you right now that this is going to be ranked higher than this. This is about 2 sisters who were the first medical doctors in America in the mid-19th century. It's just really kind of a strange story. It's in the prologue, the author is describing the first hospital staffed and run by women that Elizabeth established. And, it's talking about this 2018 celebration to unveil the commemorative plaque for this hospital. And here she says, the celebrants dispersed into the balmy evening, imagining the first female doctor, saintly and sepia-toned, bending solicitously over her grateful patients, or maybe a fiercer version, original gangster of medical women, crusading feminist. Both images were satisfying. Neither was accurate. So far, the book is really describing how she's not like other girls. So the book is explaining how she was really kind of awful, which seems like a weird flex. I don't know, but I mean, okay, yay, you're honest. Although, if I'm being honest, I think I'm a lot like her. But I didn't go into medicine. I knew better. I knew medicine was not where I wanted to go. And so, yeah, a lot of it is just, why did she do this? At the same time, it is a very feminist tale. And I've noticed that both books reference a lot of the same early feminist thinkers, far earlier even than the mid-19th century. So at this point, I wouldn't say this is bad. It's just it just feels off to me. But I'm nowhere near finished with that one yet. I still have a ways to go. And this is also Mysterious Mayhem week, so that's why I have a skeleton sitting here. Anyway, All In, however, it feels very personal to me. because she's talking about things. Okay, I wasn't around in the 60s, but she's talking about her career in the 60s, and getting into tennis in the 50s, and especially now that her story is getting into the 70s. I remember watching her play, and also the people she mentions, Chrissy Evert. I remember watching Chrissy Evert play, and I remember the tennis craze in the 70s. It's like even my dad was playing tennis. And if you've ever met my dad, you know that that's just strange. But yeah, my dad bought us all rackets, and yeah, we would head out to the park, and they had backboards. So that's what I did mostly, is I was just hitting balls against the backboard because I was no good at anything more complicated than that. Tennis is not my game. But also, my mother was and still is very much a feminist. And, feminist means a lot of different things to different people. Billie Jean King is about my mother's age and reminds me a lot of my mother when I was growing up. Even though she's almost 30 years older than I am, there is so much that I see in her that reminds me of myself. And it's also very, very timely because, she talks about her experience with, having an abortion and the fallout from that, and her dedication to women's rights, especially, particularly women's rights to make their own decisions and have control over their own bodies. So this really hits home right now, and it's a little hard to read, whereas I have so much distance. Even though I see a lot of myself in Elizabeth Blackwell, there's so much distance, and she also feels very differently about women's rights to bodily autonomy. So, yeah, I don't know where exactly yet these will be in the final rankings, but yeah, definitely All In is gonna beat The Doctor's Blackwell. I can tell you that much right now. Alright, so I have finished listening to All In by Billie Jean King, and of course I've got the hardcover here for the photos, and it's got several spreads of photos, and it also has appendices of year-by-year results and tournaments, and this has all of the information about pretty much every tennis match that Billie Jean King has ever played in. I am not reading the appendices. I'm impressed that they're there. I don't need to read the appendices to know that this was an amazing, amazing book. This is part of why I'm glad that I'm doing this, is because sports autobiography, I wouldn't have picked this up. I would not have guessed that it would be this interesting. And it was so interesting to read her perspective on my childhood years, when there was so much stuff going on that I care about today, but I had no idea because I was a toddler when a lot of this happened. And Billie Jean King has not been on my radar for being the massive influence that she is and has been pretty much all of her life. I still have several books yet to finish, but yeah, this is going in my number one slot right now. Even if you think you're not interested in this, pick it up and give it a try. Listen to the audiobook. And she's not a polished narrator like someone who narrates audiobooks for a living, but her voice is so authentic, and it's like she's just talking directly to you and telling you about her life. And this blew me away. And I've made some more progress in the Doctor's Blackwell. Okay, so Elizabeth Blackwell, she's kind of a problematic figure as a feminist icon. I think the main issue with her is that she's definitely a misanthrope. I have my misanthropic tendencies as well, so I can kind of understand that. But so much of this book is describing just how absolutely horrid society was in America and, Western Europe in general, and just in her world. I mean, she's misanthropic, but she's got really good reasons for being misanthropic. It is a tough read in a lot of ways because it goes into pretty graphic detail about what was considered medicine. I mean, it's not like this was that long ago. This was the middle of the 19th century. Yeah, the world was just an awful place, and it's kind of still an awful place. I don't know. There are things that she says that, with our modern sensibilities, we're just like, oh, how dare you! But put into that context, it's really understandable. I feel like she's pretty dang relatable. I am really appreciating this book for providing such a nitty-gritty view of life in the mid-19th century and how society operated and how hard everything was. Even if you had money and power and influence, things were still just really hard. Nobody really knew much of anything to be able to fix problems. It's like, oh, cholera. Let's just, bleed everybody. Yeah. But I'm finding it actually a very useful book, and I am liking it better the farther I get into it. So we'll see if it keeps that momentum for me. I have also switched to audiobook for Empire of Pain, which I started a while back. This is by Patrick Radden Keefe, and it's the secret history of the Sackler dynasty. Yeah, even though I'm listening to it on audiobook and the author is narrating it and he's doing a fine job. Does it have any pictures? No, it doesn't. Yeah, the book doesn't actually have any pictures, really. But it does have a handy dandy family tree. You have to, because of the library binding with the book jacket, dust jacket, you have to look at both the front and the back to be able to see the whole thing. But yeah, it's interesting, but it's also, wow, there are a lot of people, and even with the family tree, it's a little hard to keep straight. I don't really find the pharmaceutical industry or even the opioid epidemic super interesting, but he's doing a good job of making it interesting. I'm particularly interested to see how this kind of plays out, because there are a lot of points at which I'm like, yay, I'm Team Arthur. Probably mostly due to his hatred of electroshock therapy, which, yeah, and if you've ever read Shock Treatments by Emily Eastman, you know why. And I like his socialist tendencies, dare I say communist tendencies, but he's also such a capitalist. And so it's just, he's a weird person. And then, he's super sketch in so many ways, but at the same time, I can't really blame him for a lot of the things that he at least tries to do. I did skip ahead to a note on sources, and he talks a lot about how, the Sackler family really didn't want him writing this. And Arthur is just one of the people in this family saga. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how everybody else in the family plays into this. Okay, so far so good. I had to check on the sound syncing up with the video. I've had to delete a whole bunch of what I recorded the other day, well, throughout, yeah. So we'll see if I fixed it. I don't know. So I'm gonna go back and try to at least hit the high points of what I was talking about before. So yeah, so at this point I have finished all of my books for the BookTube Prize Quarterfinals, and I have ranked them and I've submitted my rankings, so yay! So now I'll tell you a little bit about them. So here, let's see. So this is All In, an autobiography by Billie Jean King, and this, I mean, yeah, it is a chonker of a book, but it has a lot of appendices. Yeah, it's a long book, but it is so engaging. And I was so thoroughly surprised by that. I'm not interested in sports, generally speaking, but this woman is important. This woman is a feminist icon, and I don't think I had any idea just how much influence she has had in so many things, and not just sports. I would highly recommend this to anybody who has any interest um, in not just sports, but in feminism in general, and in the civil rights movement, and Title IX, and education. Yeah, there's just so much here. I really think this is a very important book. So yeah, I put this in the number 1 spot because I'm doing it so that things kind of shift around as I finish books. But as of finishing All In, was in the number 1 slot. A Little Devil in America was in the number 2 slot. And Diary of a Young Naturalist was in the number 3 spot. And next up was The Doctor's Blackwell by Janice P. Nimura. And yeah, it was really interesting seeing the interplay between Elizabeth and, well, it's about Elizabeth and Emily, but it's mostly about Elizabeth. Emily doesn't really figure in much until the very end of the book. But yeah, especially Elizabeth and her brand of feminism, and that interplay with Billie Jean King and her 20th century brand of feminism, especially because they both referred to some of the same thinkers in feminist theory. And I know I'm pretty sure I mentioned earlier that I was having kind of a problem with Elizabeth and the whole not like other girls thing. The thing is, given the context of just how awful the state of medicine was, and the state of human rights, and women's rights not even really being considered human rights, maybe slightly more than enslaved persons. Yeah, they weren't really considered human. And she was an abolitionist, so she was very forward thinking on a number of levels. And one thing I really did like about this book, and as a writer of historical fiction or historical fantasy more than just historical fiction, but was how the level of detail that Nimura went into about what life was like, just quotidian life, but also what medicine was like. And I'm reminded of going to Arrow Rock when I was a kid, and there was a frontier doctor's office museum, and they enjoyed scaring us kids with tales of how brutal the practice of medicine was in the mid 19th century. And yeah, it's this really took me back because it was very similar, just a lot more detailed. As far as I can tell, this seemed to be pretty well researched. There are a lot of endnotes. This seems to have a pretty thorough bibliography, and reference. It seems to be well referenced. So, I, as far as I can tell, this was well researched. It felt well researched, and I mean, take that for whatever it's worth, because I'm not a historical researcher myself. So I was having a hard time figuring out where exactly to put this one in my rankings, but I finally landed on putting it right below All In, which then bumped A Little Devil in America down to the 3rd slot, and Diary of a Young Naturalist down to the 4th slot. And then I switched to the audiobook of Empire of Pain, and Patrick Radden Keefe does just a fine job on narrating Empire of Pain. I mean, you can feel how important this subject is to him. This is about the Sackler dynasty, the Sackler family that is more or less responsible for the opioid crisis that we find ourselves in. I have to say, though, that this is extremely well done. I have no complaints about it whatsoever. I just am not that interested in pharmacology as a topic. It's I mean, if anybody could engage me on it, I think it would be this author, and he was very engaging, and this book did hold my attention. I think I just didn't feel that connection with it like I did with some of the other books I've read for this, quarterfinals round. And it's another one of those books that I would urge you to read even if you don't really have any interest in it. I am very glad I read it, and frankly, none of these books are bad or even mediocre. These are all very fine books. So I think, so I feel really bad. So yeah, I'm putting this in the 4th slot, and I am bumping Diary of a Young Naturalist down to the number 5 slot. And I mean, yeah, Diary of a Young Naturalist is perfectly fine. Yeah, these are my relative rankings so far. Oh, and also, I just want to add a quick note that much as I found connections between All In and the Doctor's Blackwell, I also found so many connections between the Doctor's Blackwell and Empire of Pain. So this has been a really interesting judging experience, reading these books that kind of dovetail with each other. And I mean, A Little Devil in America, that dovetailed in a lot with All In, and even a little bit with the other books, including the final book that I read, and that is Chasing Me to My Grave, an artist's memoir of the Jim Crow South by Winfred Rimbert. And yeah, get a copy of this book. I listened to it on audiobook. Winfred did not narrate it. It's escaping me who narrated it. I'll put that in the description below. So that was the text that I got on the audiobook, and that came from a series of conversations and interviews with Aaron I. Kelly. It's As Told to Aaron I. Kelly. That's what it says on the cover. And I just learned that this won the Pulitzer for biography earlier this month. But this is very much an art book. You can see some of it on the cover there. Sorry, the glare is really bad here. But let's see if I can find a big one to show you. Yeah. But it's got the hardcover is full of all of this gorgeous artwork that came from a place of pain, because it's all about his growing up in the Jim Crow South, and and so many hardships. So if you can't get a hold of the hardcover to look through the pictures, because there are so many illustrations showing his artwork, which he did. So he painted and carved leather for his works. And I mean, holding up images to my phone camera is not going to do it justice. You can't really see it. And I'm sure even the full color plates in the book don't do it justice. I would dearly love to see an exhibition in person. But I also learned that he died last year. So it was really sad reading it and knowing that we have lost his voice, and his voice as he's telling his story. I mean his personal voice, not the narrator's voice. The narrator's great, by the way, but his personal voice is so strong and so amazing. I know on Hoopla all they have is the audiobook. So in my library does have this hardcover. That's where I borrowed it from. But if for whatever reason you can't get a hold of the hardcover, do whatever you can to find these images so that you can see for yourself just how brilliant this man was. This just blew me away. All In was amazing. This was even better. So there we go. Number 1 slot. These are my final rankings. Number 1 slot, Chasing Me to My Grave by Winfred Rimbert. Number 2 slot, All In, an autobiography by Billie Jean King. Number 3 slot, The Doctor's Blackwell by Janice P. Nimura. Number 4 slot, A Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdurraqib. Number 5, Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. And number 6, and not a bad book at all. I'd say all of these books are 4 or 5 stars. But Diary of a Young Naturalist by Dara McAnulty. If you can get a hold of any or all of these, I highly encourage you to read them. So yeah, I am going to wrap up my video and get these books back to the library. By the time you see this, all of the results will have been posted. So yeah, go watch the videos, see what made it through to the next round. I would not be sad to see any of these 6 books make it through to the semifinals. I will not be judging in the semifinals. I've got a road trip going, and so I can't commit to it. But I do hope to be back for judging the finals. We'll just see what life's thrown at me then. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these or if you want to read any of these. Yeah, share your thoughts on these, and let me know if you're judging the BookTube prize. Yeah, let's just chat in the comments below. And in the meantime, please like and subscribe, and see you around.